Olá, eu gostaria muito de agradecer primeiramente, que é uma honra ter a Kim Bartel no Brasil, em São Paulo, nos próximos meses aqui, para falarmos sobre um curso e um tópico extremamente importante, que é a prática sensível ao trauma para os profissionais brasileiros. Estou muito feliz de poder contar com essa profissional renomada, Kim Bartel, que é uma terapeuta ocupacional, autora de muitos trabalhos também, instrutora do NDT e também grande palestrante aí nesses temas que são extremamente importantes na área das relações entre as pessoas e conexões entre profissional e criança e entre os profissionais e também familiares.
My heart leaps with excitement to have this conversation with you, Ana Paula, my friend and colleague in Sao Paulo, Brazil, who shares with me a deep love of neurodevelopmental treatment. And it is indeed an honor to be returning to Brazil in September.
Yes, I'm very happy, and we are thrilled to have this opportunity to deep dive into your expertise and inspire our audience here in Brazil to join your transformative work. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
I was studying and reading a lot about trauma, and I know that now I am in front of the best person to help me with these questions. And to start, Kim, could you share a bit about what inspired you, your profound commitment to trauma-sensitive practice and why this approach is so vital in today's world? Então, para começarmos, eu gostaria muito que a Kim pudesse trazer para a gente como que a gente pode se aproximar, ter um entendimento um pouquinho melhor do que é a prática sensível ao trauma e por que essa proximidade com esse tópico é tão importante, é tão vital para o nosso dia a dia.
A child was referred to me with the diagnosis of neurodiversity. He was about 4 years old and had a long laundry list of movement challenges, of problems with sensory processing, and behavior issues. And one of the pieces in his referral was the term foster child. And I didn't really know much about his story, but he came looking very much like a kiddo with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, developmental coordination disorder, blah, 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 diagnoses. And what I learned is that he had watched his mom be murdered by his dad when he was a small child, under the age of 1. And he would play in my sandbox in the clinic. And he would take all the little figures. He knew the story of how he lost his parents or lost access to his parents. And so he would take the little figures and he would bury the mom and dad, and then he'd throw them out of the sand. And this would go on over and over and over again, week after week. And I was about 25, so I had no idea what to do with this information. And then one day, by chance, he climbed into the lycra swing behind the sandbox. We call it sand tray. And he curled himself into a ball, and I didn't really know what to do, but I came up underneath the lycra and kind of curled him into a ball, into a womb. And I just started to rock. This is kind of like clinical intuition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he started to sob and sob. It was so hard to watch. And then he started to scream with rage. And I started to think, I'm over my head. I don't know what I'm doing. And he came out of the lycra swing. He was now I have to tell you, 4 years of age. And he took the little mom and dad and went to the little boy in the sand and said, "I'm sorry." And this changed things for me forever. Because what I thought was neurodevelopmental alone, it lit up this idea that the brain is shaped by experience. And this began the journey of discovery of how trauma impacts behavior, the brain, and development.
Very good, very good. And let's talk a little bit about the attachment theory and thoughts, Kim. And I know that it's such a critical lens for understanding human behavior within trauma-sensitive practice, right? So could you explain the connection, please, between attachment theory and creating effective therapy sessions in a trauma-informed context?
Beautiful question. And could you please repeat the question in Portuguese? Because it's so good.
Ok. Então, gostaria de saber, para a gente conversar um pouquinho sobre a teoria, né, de aproximação. Então, a gente sabe que é muito importante ter o olhar também para o entendimento humano por meio do comportamento, principalmente no nosso trabalho com a prática sensível ao trauma. Então, eu pedi para Kim Bartel, por favor, trazer para a gente uma conexão e poder explicar a conexão entre essa teoria, né, de conexão e também como que a gente pode fazer para criar terapias mais efetivas num contexto mais pensando também nessas crianças que sofreram algum tipo de trauma.
Well, attachment is part of our human capacity to survive. As a newborn, you can't do anything unless a caregiver has the ability to put their mind in your mind and read the signals, the nonverbal signals of, do you want to eat? Do you need to eat? Are you tired? Do you have an upset tummy? What are the emotional cues that the baby is expressing? And this requires an attuned caregiver who is present to those signals and responds to them in a, we say, contingent way. Serve and return, like playing tennis. The baby serves a cue and the caregiver returns. And we now know this is the formation of the child's sense of self and the foundation of regulation, of physiology. You know, we talk about behavior and regulation all the time. And attachment is the seat of regulation. And so if a caregiver, for some reason, struggles to put their mind in the mind of their child, with the preoccupation of their own struggles, their own suffering, their own childhood history, their own transgenerational trauma, legacies of trauma in their generational experiences, this can create a difficulty in this dance between child and caregiver. And then the child's brain has to adapt how it's going to interact with the parent to get its needs met. And so attachment is an adaptation that keeps the relationship intact, but not necessarily well regulated.
Yeah. And I know that validating the child's experience is sometimes it's a good way to attach with them too, right? And for professionals working with children who have experienced trauma, what are some key strategies or principles that can help validate the child's experience and make them feel truly seen and understood? Então, eu estou perguntando para a Kim que para os profissionais que trabalham com crianças que tiveram algum tipo de experiências com trauma, Quais são algumas estratégias chaves ou princípios que podem ajudar a validar um pouquinho mais essas experiências que as crianças têm e fazerem com que elas se sintam mais confiantes e também que elas se sintam percebidas e entendidas?
Anna Paula, this question is especially pertinent to kids with neurodiversity because their nervous systems sometimes require a translator. Their meaning, the cues that they give may be hard for the caregiver to read, either because of the way their body moves or because of their sensory processing. Children who are visually impaired are high risk for attachment disruptions, given the way they experience the world. And so caregivers and therapists need to refine their skills of attunement to create safety. And so validation of the child's experience requires that our mind as clinicians is watching, tracking all the facial expressions, vocal tones, behaviors, to give the child a sense of, I know what you're saying to me. And this is important because we get very stuck on our goals and objectives, getting the child to just do what we want them to do. But doing something from a nervous system experience of discomfort and lack of safety gets wired in with the skill and produces anxiety and actually creates, in fact, more motor activation in the extensor muscles under the conditions of fear. So we have to be very holistic in the way we interpret this information. So validation sounds like, this is really hard for you, and I know that you can do it. Yeah.
So it means that we have to put ourselves in their shoes, right? And to feel what they are feeling, and then we try to connect with them effectively, right?
Yes, and many of us do this intuitively, and we can all continue to become more refined. It actually requires that we slow down.
Yeah. So, Kim, we know that trauma is a term that we hear so often, right? Here in Brazil too. But I think that it's very important to understand it in a scientific context, and you do it so well, right? So could you provide us with a definition of trauma, a little definition of trauma, and share insights from neuroscience about how it impacts the brain and the body?
Okay.
Eu pergunto para Kim, digo que trauma ainda é uma terminologia muito frequente aqui no Brasil e que muitas vezes a gente não sabe como defini-la. E pedir para Kim tentar fazer com que nós entendêssemos melhor pelo lado científico e como que a gente pode conectar com a neurociência essa definição de trauma e o impacto disso no nosso corpo e no nosso cérebro.
Such a good question. When people hear the word trauma, it creates an idea of what that is. People think of it like a car accident, a sudden loss of a loved one, an earthquake, events. And that gets people stuck in their perception of how they should manage those experiences. This is not the definition of trauma. The true definition of trauma, which is a big deal, is related to stress. And there are different kinds of trauma. And one of the most impactful on our capacity to function as well as be healthy is developmental trauma. And these are any experience, and when I say this, everyone starts analyzing themselves, any experience in relationships with our caregivers, our family, the people close to us, where we have to give up our authentic self to sacrifice us for the relationship. Guess what? That means all of humanity. And so these developmental traumas come in a continuum. Sometimes they happen once in a while, which is actually important for resilience. If we had it perfect, none of us would have any capacity to cope with stress at all. However, if it's my daily experience, then my brain doesn't develop in the way that it needs to have the capacity to regulate my physiology to manage stress. And so I then become very anxious, very behavioral. It comes out in the way that I engage in relationships. And it's misunderstood because people think that behavior, bad behavior, is willful or manipulative rather than adaptive, a coping strategy, a communication. And so trauma is in the eye of the perceiver. And when you think about kids with autism, with visual impairment, with movement challenges, just living in their bodies can be traumatic.
Yeah. And we know you often talk about how early attachments adaptations can become embodied in the movement system, right? So can you expand on this idea and how can therapists use this knowledge to guide their intervention and these principles that you were talking about? Então eu pergunto para Kim que a gente ouve muito, né, que essas adaptações, né, dessas conexões, elas podem estar muito embebidas, né, no corpo da criança e também trazendo algumas condições do sistema do movimento. E eu gostaria que ela expandisse um pouquinho nessa ideia e como que os terapeutas, eles podem usar esse conhecimento também prévio, né, de trauma, para guiar nas intervenções com essas crianças que têm essas alterações.
This question is the hope that people will come to the course for the answer, because this is like the golden nugget of the conversation that we'll have together in September. We know that the autonomic nervous system feeds the movement system. And that stress responses, fight, flight, the sympathetic nervous system taps right into primitive movement patterns, into extensor muscles, into postural muscles that have us stay up against gravity. And when we are reusing over and over again fight, flight responses repeatedly, day after day after day, they become, as you said, embodied. And many of the children that we treat, they have a greater degree of access to these muscles, these extensor biased muscles, because they are using their stress response to generate them, which locks them into a dysregulated state. And so when we think about this holistic view of movement and arousal and emotional regulation, they're so intimately connected. Additionally, children with significant dissociation, coping through terror by leaving their bodies, leaving the present experience, which is the most common strategy in early childhood, is to actually check out. What we know is that it results in postural collapse, which looks a lot like low tone. And so we again, if I have postural collapse, then I'm biased into this autonomic state. The autonomic state and the movement state sit side by side. So we need to treat them side by side.
Mhm. And sometimes a wrong word can trigger lots of these kind of behaviors, right?
Totally. A word or a look or a tone of voice.
The pressure of our hands too. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So let's say something about play and building therapeutic relationship and this kind of children. And we know that play is often through in relation to children, right? But it's such an integral part of building connections with the parents, with the therapists, right? And how does play foster therapeutic relationship within a trauma-sensitive framework? Então, eu digo que o brincar, né, ele é frequentemente utilizado, né, como uma forma de relação e criação de conexões entre aquela criança, o terapeuta ou aos pais. E eu gostaria de saber da Kim como que o brincar ele pode ajudar dentro desse quadro, né, de identificação aí de tratamento na relação do sistema com as crianças que têm trauma.
Another course all by itself. You know, play is, as we say in occupational therapy, the occupation of the child.
Mm-hmm.
And play is a state of balanced autonomics and attachment. And what do I mean by that? You're in a co-regulated dance. Play is embedded with opportunity for putting your mind in the mind of the child, for this capacity for what we call attunement. But there's also excitement, enthusiasm, joy to manage in the nervous system. We don't often think of joy and excitement as stress, but it is. That when we get excited, this is actually the chemistry of adrenaline. But when that adrenaline gets combined with love, oxytocin, this is the sweet spot of regulation in the nervous system, where I learn to have this window of tolerance. And so play is filled with multiple domains of development, cognition, motor planning, ideation, but also social connection. And it feels funny to have this dialogue with Play Core kids, that what is the value of play? And just to add that whole idea of play as a part of self-worth, self-esteem, capacity for identity, and creation of my ability to be in the world with others.
Yes. And Kim, I would love if you could leave a message for Brazilian professionals to came and join with us this beautiful topic that we can explore a lot in our treatment. And I think that it's the core of our treatment for other techniques, about the relationship, about the connection, and to see inside of the children. And I know that you do it in a very, very good way. And you are you can inspire us with your classes and with your presence here in Brazil. E eu gostaria muito que a Kim deixasse uma mensagem para os profissionais brasileiros de quão importante é a gente aprender a se conectar com as crianças e de que forma que a gente pode fazer isso para essas crianças que tiveram algum tipo de trauma, e ela vai explicar para a gente o que de fato é o trauma, de uma maneira mais profunda, mas que ela deixasse uma mensagem como um convite para vocês a participarem desse curso conosco.
Mm. Well, trauma-sensitive practice has now visited 20 different countries. And what I am told, and what I know, is that the truth of it is the only person you can change is yourself. And that even though clinicians, people, come to this class in hopes of learning how to best support their clients, the children and families, they end up actually looking at themselves. And that this creates a sense of self-care and ability to know oneself in a deeper way as to what I bring in my gifts to the sessions that I offer. And so we are told all the time, I say we, Relationship Matters, we are told humbly that this course is a life changer for us as well as for the families. And I love your colleagues, you and your colleagues in Brazil. Highly, highly memorable in my heart and mind our time with you, and I cannot wait to come back and be with you all again this year.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Kim. So I think that I am so thankful for you for sharing your invaluable insights here for Brazilian professionals. And it's been such an honor to learn from you again at VVM course and now with trauma sensitive course. And the other course that you probably come to Brazil next year and the other one, and I'm sure that the professionals has been deeply inspired with you. So before we wrap up, right? So I'd love to remind everyone that Kim Bartel's upcoming course on trauma sensitive practice will be happening right here in Brazil at Laramara. That it's a happiness place there, and with full professional translation available for Portuguese speakers here, with Sonia Tradução. And this is one of a kind opportunity to deepen your professional expertise and make a real difference in the lives of those you treat in your life, right? And Kim, thank you again for being on this journey with us here at Playcore Kids and here in Brazil. And we can't wait to see the impact of your work continue to grow here. Eu gostaria muito de agradecer a Kim por mais uma vez esse envolvimento no Brasil, antes com o curso VVM, que foi maravilhoso, incrível, as pessoas amaram, e agora com o Trauma Sensitive Practice, e o curso de Prática Sensível ao Trauma, que é um curso que vai aproximar mais as pessoas na conexão com os seus pacientes também. Então, a Kim e o Bob são pessoas excepcionais que estarão conosco para trazer conhecimento com neurociência, com bagagem, né, a bagagem para esse tratamento das crianças também, para todos nós conseguirmos continuarmos crescermos e fazerem com que as pessoas se desenvolvam.
Thank you so much.